There's a certain madness in writing your heart's deepest desires and publishing them for millions to see, especially when the object of those desires sits 3 offices away, completely unaware that he's the star of your secret world. Nina Torres knew this madness intimately. Her fingers hesitated over the publish button, hovering like a hummingbird uncertain of its landing. Chapter 20 of Forbidden Ambition sat ready, waiting to join its predecessors in the digital universe. 3 million readers were waiting, commenting, demanding more of the mysterious CEO who commanded. Boardrooms with quiet intensity and had eyes that could read balance sheets and broken hearts with equal precision. If only they knew the truth. Nina glanced at the framed photo on her desk, a company retreat from last year where she stood in the back row, barely visible, while Ryan Foster dominated the center. His smile reserved but genuine. That smile rarely appeared at work, but when it did, it transformed his entire face from intimidating, executive, to someone remarkably human. She pressed publish before she could overthink it further. The words were out there now, joining thousands of others she'd written over 18 months. Each sentence a confession she'd never speak aloud. Each scene a fantasy she'd never admit to having. The morning sun filtered through her apartment windows, casting long shadows across her laptop. In 6 hours, she'd walk into Foster Technologies wearing her professional armor, tailored blazer, sensible heels, hair pulled back in a neat bun. She'd become Nina Torres, marketing coordinator. The woman who delivered presentations with confidence and handled client complaints with grace. No one would suspect that the same fingers typing quarterly reports also crafted passionate encounters between fictional versions of people they passed in hallways every day. Her phone buzzed with notifications. Comments were already flooding in. This CEO is everything. When does Nina realize he's been watching her too? Chapter 20 destroyed me. The way he looks at her during meetings. I can't breathe. L. Rivers, you're killing us with this slow burn. Nina smiled at her pen name. Simple, anonymous, safe. L. Rivers had become someone else entirely. Someone brave enough to express desires Nina Torres kept locked away. Someone who could write sentences like his hand brushed her wrist during the presentation. A touch so brief it might have been accident, except for the way his eyes found hers immediately after. Asking a question neither of them was ready to answer, 'cause that had happened. Last Tuesday, during the product launch presentation, Ryan's hand had touched hers when reaching for the same document, and his eyes. Those impossible green-gray eyes had held hers for 3 heartbeats before he'd apologized and stepped back. Nina had gone home and written 4,000 words in a feverish haze, trying to capture the electricity of that moment, trying to make sense of what she'd seen in his expression. Her phone rang, shattering her thoughts. Work number. She answered professionally. Nina Torres speaking. Morning, Nina. It's Jen from reception. The voice sounded oddly cautious. Mr. Foster asked me to let you know he'd like to see you in his office at 9:30. He said to bring your current project files. Nina's stomach performed an Olympic-level flip. Did he say what it's regarding? No, just that it was important. You're not in trouble or anything. He seemed actually quite calm. Almost pleasant, if you can believe that. After hanging up, Nina stared at her reflection in the darkened laptop screen. This was routine, she told herself. Ryan occasionally called team members for updates. It meant nothing. He hadn't discovered her secret. He couldn't have, except her colleague. Maya had been talking about forbidden ambition. In the break room yesterday, loudly enthusiastically, pointing out every similarity between the fictional CEO and Ryan. The same coffee order, black with 1 sugar. The same habit of removing his watch during intense concentration. The same scar on his left hand from a childhood accident that Nina had once glimpsed and unconsciously woven into her narrative. Dot, Nina whispered to her empty apartment. By 9:15. She was walking through Foster Technologies' glass doors, her heels clicking against marble floors with the rhythm of a countdown. The office buzzed with its usual morning energy. Developers hunched over keyboards, sales teams practicing pitches, the coffee machine working overtime. Ryan's office occupied the corner of the 7th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the city skyline. Through the glass walls, Nina could see him at his desk, reading something on his tablet with that focused intensity she knew so well. He'd removed his suit jacket, sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms that she definitely had not described in excessive detail in Chapter 14. His assistant, Tom, waved her through with a sympathetic smile that did nothing for Nina's nerves. She knocked lightly on the doorframe. Ryan looked up and something flickered across his face too quickly for her to interpret. "Nina, come in, please. Close the door." Those 4 words sent ice through her veins. In 3 years at the company, she'd never been asked to close the door to Ryan's office. She sat in the leather chair across from his desk, project files clutched like a shield against her chest. Ryan set down his tablet face down, laced his fingers together, and regarded her with an expression that was neither angry nor amused, but something else entirely. Something that made her pulse race for reasons she didn't want to examine. "Nina, I want to ask you about something that has nothing to do with your excellent work performance." His voice was measured, careful, "and I want you to know that whatever you answer, your position here is secure. This is a personal question, not a professional one." Her mouth went dry. "Okay." Ryan picked up his tablet and turned it toward her. On the screen, in letters she knew intimately, was the title page of Forbidden Ambition by L. Rivers. "I've been reading this," he said quietly, his eyes never leaving hers, "and I'm curious. Does the author work here?" Time suspended itself in the space between Ryan's question and Nina's answer. The office suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city continued its indifferent sprawl, but inside this glass-walled room, Nina's carefully constructed worlds, both real and fictional, were colliding. Her voice emerged barely above a whisper. The project files trembled slightly in her hands. She could lie, deny everything, claim it was mere coincidence that someone had captured Ryan's mannerisms with photographic precision. But something in his expression stopped her. There was no accusation there, no anger, just curiosity and something else, something that looked almost like hope. "Yes," she finally said, the word escaping like a confession. "I wrote it." Ryan leaned back in his chair, and to Nina's absolute shock, the corners of his mouth lifted in the smallest smile. "I thought so." "Your sentence structure gave you away. You have a distinctive way with commas. It's the same pattern I've noticed in your marketing proposals." Nina wasn't sure whether to be mortified or impressed. "You notice my comma usage?" "I notice a lot of things." He set the tablet down gently. "Nina, I'm not upset. I'm actually quite amazed. This," he gestured at the screen, "is extraordinary writing. The emotional depth, the character development, the way you capture small moments and make them feel monumental. That takes real talent." She blinked, certain she'd misheard. "You're not angry?" "Why would I be angry?" Ryan stood, moving to the window with his hands in his pockets. Flattered, maybe. Curious? Definitely. But angry? No. He turned to face her, and there was a vulnerability in his posture she'd never seen before. "Though I do have questions." "How did you know about the scar?" "I've never told anyone here how I got it." Nina felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I saw it once. You were signing documents last year, and your sleeve rode up. I noticed you rubbed it when you were stressed, like it was a nervous habit. You're remarkably observant." He moved back toward his desk but didn't sit. Instead, he perched on the edge. Closer to her now, the dynamic shifting from boss-employee to something more equal. The coffee order, the watch, the way the character thinks, it's all accurate. Almost uncomfortably so. "I'm so sorry. I never thought anyone would make the connection. I never meant to invade your privacy or Nina," said her name softly, and she stopped. "What if I told you I understand better than you think? What if I told you I have my own secret creative outlet?" She looked up at him sharply. "What do you mean?" Ryan crossed to a bookshelf behind his desk and pulled out a leather journal, worn at the edges. He held it for a moment, as if weighing whether to share, then handed it to her. "I write poetry. Have since college. No one knows except my sister. Nina opened the journal with reverent care. The pages were filled with his handwriting, smaller and more hurried than his signature. Words flowing across lines without the rigid structure of business correspondence. She read a few lines, in boardrooms built of glass and steel. I wear the mask they need to see, but late at night when deals are sealed, I wonder who I'm meant to be. Ryan, she breathed. These are beautiful. They're private. Just like your writing was supposed to be. He sat down across from her again, and now they were just two people who'd accidentally revealed themselves to each other. I understand the need for an outlet. The pressure of this role, the constant performance always being on. Writing lets me be honest in ways I can't be anywhere else. Nina looked at him with new eyes. I never knew you felt that way, is the point. No one does. He ran a hand through his hair, messing up the perfect corporate styling. But you saw something anyway. In your book, your character, he's not just a CEO, he's lonely. He's brilliant, but isolated. He wants connection, but doesn't know how to reach for it without seeming unprofessional or taking advantage of his position. That's how you feel? The question escaped before Nina could stop it. Ryan met her gaze directly. Every single day. I built this company from nothing, and somewhere along the way, I forgot how to just be human. I have employees, business partners, investors, but not friends. Not real ones. And certainly not, trailed off, seeming to reconsider his words. Not what? Not someone who sees me the way your protagonist is seen. As a complete person, flawed but trying, strong but vulnerable. Someone worth knowing beyond the title. The air between them felt charged with unspoken things. Nina clutched his journal like it was precious. Why are you telling me this? Ryan stood and moved to the window again, his silhouette against the bright skyline. Because I've spent 3 days reading your novel, and I've realized something. You didn't write me as a fantasy. You wrote me as a person. The coffee and the watch. Those are surface details. But the loneliness, the fear of being seen as just a position rather than a person, the way the character questions whether anyone would want him without the power, that's deeper. That's real. Turned back to her. How did you know? Nina set the journal down carefully. Because I watched you. Not in a creepy way, she added quickly, but in 3 years, I've seen moments. Like when you stay late after everyone's gone, standing at this window, or how you always remember people's names, even the night cleaning staff, or the way your expression changes when you think no one's looking, like you're carrying weight no one else can see. See all that? Writers observe. It's what we do. Nina found courage she didn't know she possessed. And maybe I paid more attention to you than I should have. Maybe I wrote those feelings into the story because I recognized them. Because I feel lonely sometimes too, invisible in my own way. Just another employee in a sea of them. Ryan moved back toward her, sitting in the chair beside hers, instead of across the desk, eliminating the physical barrier between them. You're not invisible, Nina. Your work is exceptional. Your insights in meetings are sharp. I've recommended you for promotion twice to the board. You have. She stared at him in shock. You didn't know? That's on me. I should have told you directly. Shook his head. This is exactly what I mean. I've spent so long maintaining professional distance that I've forgotten how to communicate like a human being. How to say your work matters or I appreciate you without it sounding like corporate speak. Nina felt something shift between them, like puzzle pieces quietly clicking into place. What happens now? Ryan was quiet for a long moment. I have a proposition, and I want you to know you can say no without any professional repercussions. I met her eyes. I'd like to help you with your writing. Give you feedback. Be a sounding board. And maybe, if you're willing, you could read my poetry. Give me honest thoughts. We could both use someone who understands the need for creative expression. You want to be writing partners? I want to be friends, Nina. Real friends. People who see each other as more than roles and titles. And if that friendship happens to include mutual creative support, even better. He smiled, and it was that rare, genuine smile that transformed his face. Unless you think it's too weird, given that I'm technically your boss, Nina thought about it. About the loneliness in his poetry and the loneliness in her own heart. about how life sometimes offered unexpected connections in the strangest ways? It's definitely unconventional. Most worthwhile things are. Ryan stood and extended his hand. What do you say? Friends. Nina stood and took his hand. His grip was warm, firm, and somehow more honest than any business handshake they'd ever exchanged. Friends. Good. Now about chapter 12. Ryan's eyes glinted with humor. The boardroom scene. I would never be that obvious about staring. I'm much more subtle, Nina laughed. Actually laughed, the tension breaking like sunlight through clouds. Oh, you think you're subtle? I know I am. Ryan, you literally stop talking mid-sentence when I walk into meetings late. His ears went slightly red. Do I? Every time. He rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture she'd seen 100 times, but never understood until now. It was embarrassment, humanizing and real. Well, maybe I'm less subtle than I thought. And for the first time in 3 years, Nina felt like she was seeing the real Ryan Foster. Not the CEO, not the boss, just a man who wrote poetry in secret and was braver than he knew. The weeks that followed felt like living in a story Nina might have written, except it was better because it was real and unexpected in ways fiction never could be. Thereafter hours. Meetings started cautiously. Ryan would send a message asking if she wanted to grab coffee and discuss creative projects. They'd meet in neutral spaces. A quiet cafe, 3 blocks from the office. A bookstore with comfortable reading nooks. Once even a park bench under autumn trees. At first they stuck strictly to writing. Nina would bring printed chapters, and Ryan would offer thoughts with the same analytical precision he brought to business strategy. Except softer, more encouraging. This dialogue feels forced, he'd say, tapping a paragraph. You're telling me they're connecting, but I'm not feeling it. What if instead of having him explain his feelings, you show how his hand's steady when she's near? How he remembers small things she mentioned weeks ago. And he was right. Every time. His insights made her writing stronger, more authentic. In return, Nina read his poetry with the attention it deserved. She'd sit cross-legged on a cafe chair, his journal open before her, feeling the weight of his trust. This one, she'd say, pointing to verses about glass towers and golden cages. This is raw and beautiful, but you're holding back in the last stanza. You set up this image of wanting to break free, but then you pull back to safety. What if you committed to the metaphor fully? What if you let the cage shatter? Ryan would lean forward, eyes intent. You mean like this? And he'd rewrite on a napkin, pushing past his usual careful boundaries into something braver. They talked about writing, but they also talked about everything else. Nina learned that Ryan had wanted to be an architect before business pragmatism won out. That he was terrified of becoming his workaholic father, who'd died never having taken a vacation. That he donated anonymously to literacy programs because a librarian had changed his life when he was 12. Ryan learned that Nina had started writing romance novels after her grandmother died, needing to create happy endings when life felt unpredictable. That she'd chosen marketing because it was practical, but she dreamed of writing full-time. That she felt caught between ambition and fear, wanting more but afraid to reach for it. Why afraid? Ryan asked one evening as they walked through the city after coffee had turned to dinner. Nina shrugged, watching streetlights flicker on in the dusk. Because wanting things out loud makes them real. Makes the potential failure real too. Or makes the potential success possible, Ryan countered. He stopped walking, turning to face her under a street lamp. Nina, I've read enough of your work now to know you're genuinely talented. Not good for an amateur talented, publishable, professional. Why keep it secret? Because it's safe, L. Rivers can fail, and Nina Torres stays intact. But L. Rivers succeeds, and Nina Torres never gets the credit. His eyes were intense in the lamplight. You wrote a character who was afraid to be seen. Is that what you're doing too? Hiding your light because visibility feels dangerous? The question hit too close to home. Maybe, she admitted quietly. Maybe I've spent so long being careful, being professional and appropriate, that I forgot how to take risks. Then take one now. Ryan's voice was soft but urgent. Own your work. Be proud of it. Submit your manuscript to agents. Let Nina Torres be the writer, not just the secret identity. What if I fail? What if you don't? He smiled. Besides, I've learned something these past weeks. Failure while being authentic beats success while pretending to be someone else. I've been the successful CEO who was dying inside. It's not worth it. Nina studied him, seeing the truth in his expression. These weeks had changed him too. The rigid corporate mask had cracked, revealing someone warmer underneath. He laughed more icily now, made jokes in meetings, remembered to go home before midnight. He was becoming, she realized, the person his poetry suggested he wanted to be. You're different lately, she said. People have noticed, in a good way. I feel different. Having someone to talk to, someone who knows both sides of me, it's liberating. He started walking again, hands in his pockets. I didn't realize how exhausting it was to perform constantly until I had moments where I didn't have to. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, the city alive around them with evening energy. Finally, Ryan spoke again, his voice carrying a different weight. Nina, I need to tell you something. And I need you to hear it as my friend first, before anything else. Her heart quickened. Okay? These weeks with you have been the best part of my days. Not just the writing discussions, though those matter. It's you. Your perspective, your humor, the way you challenge my thinking, the way you see possibilities where I see obstacles. He stopped walking again, facing her directly. I value our friendship tremendously. But I'd be lying if I said that's all I feel. Nina's breath caught. The street lamp cast shadows across his face, highlighting the vulnerability there. I know this complicates everything, Ryan continued. And I know I'm your boss, which makes this ethically complex. I've actually already spoken to HR about potential transfer options for you. Not to push you out, but to create a situation where we're not in a direct reporting relationship. If he paused, searching for words if you felt similarly and wanted to explore what that might mean. You talked to HR? Nina's voice was barely a whisper. Oh, I wanted to do this right. No pressure, no professional complications. If you want to stay friends and only friends, that's completely fine. Your career won't be affected either way. But if there's a chance you feel this connection too, I wanted to eliminate the power imbalance first. Nina looked at him, really looked at him. Ryan Foster, CEO and poet. Her boss and her friend. The man she'd written about, and the man who'd surprised her by being more complex than any character she'd created. I feel it too, she said simply. I have for a while. I just never thought it could be real instead of fiction. She nodded, smiling despite the tears that surprised her by appearing. Yeah, exactly that. Ryan reached out slowly, giving her time to step back if she wanted. When she didn't, his hand found hers, fingers intertwining in a way that felt both new and inevitable. So where does that leave us? Rewriting the rules? Nina suggested, squeezing his hand. Making our own story instead of following the expected plot? I like that. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. Though I should warn you, I'm probably going to be terrible at the romance part. I haven't dated in 4 years. Well, lucky for you, I've written about 50,000 words on the subject. I might have some ideas. Ryan laughed, and it was that full, genuine laugh she'd only started hearing recently. I'm going to hold you to that. Though fair warning, if you write about this too, I want editing rights. Deal. But only if I get to edit your next poetry collection before publication. He looked surprised. Ryan, your poetry deserves to be read. You deserve to be seen as more than just a CEO. So yes, publication. She stepped closer, emboldened. We're both going to stop hiding, remember? Take risks. Be authentic. He cupped her face gently with his free hand. Together? Together. When he kissed her, it wasn't like the dramatic scenes Nina had written in her novels. It was softer, more tentative, flavored with uncertainty and hope. It was real, which made it better than any fiction. As they walked back through the city, hands linked, Nina realized something profound. She'd spent years writing about finding love in unexpected places. It's about two people seeing past surfaces to the truth underneath. She'd never imagined she was actually writing a map to her own story. So, Ryan said as they reached her apartment building, What happens in the next chapter? Nina smiled up at him. I don't know. I think we're writing this one together. For the first time in her life, Nina Torres was more excited about living her story than writing it. The months that followed proved that reality could indeed surpass fiction. Nina's manuscript found an agent who loved it, then a publisher who believed in it. Forbidden Ambition was rewritten with changed names and modified details, releasing 2 positive reviews that praised its emotional authenticity. Ryan's poetry collection, published under his own name, surprised the business world and earned respect from literary circles. His vulnerability on the page humanized him in ways that made him a better leader. More approachable, more genuine. They built something real together. Not just as partners, but as 2 people who'd been brave enough to be seen. And every time Nina wrote now, it wasn't escape from reality, but celebration of it. Because she'd learned the most important lesson any writer could know. Sometimes the best stories aren't the ones we imagine, but the ones we're brave enough to live.